And an honor
Oh boy.
to have Dusty Dienst in studio this morning, the Faribault Fire Chief. And Dusty, I'm impressed you showed up. I do know Gordy warned you I'd be filling in for him, and you still came.
I still showed up, yep. Appointment's an appointment.
You saw that fine print in your contract and other responsibilities as assigned.
That's right. Yep.
But it always is fun to see you come into the studio. Of course, that's one of the things I really like about all you guys in some sort of emergency management. You're trying to be out there educating and preventing fires and emergencies rather than just trying to treat them and deal with them after they happen.
Yeah, that's a part that we try to get better at all the time, is being more proactive instead of reactive. We always train on and focus on what we're going to do after something happens, but if there's certain things, then there are certain things in the world that we can prevent from happening as much as it does. We need to do that. That's just a thing that we should be doing as human beings, is teaching others what we know and trying to make them better and safer than we are.
And you do that with the fire department, but you see that kind of change happening with law enforcement too, whether it's local police, state troopers, sheriff's department. They're out there too in schools and a lot of places trying to be a lot more proactive and educate.
Yeah, proactive, and unfortunately a lot of the stuff that we learn are from bad things happening, but the good thing is that we grab hold of those bad things and learn from them and try to do our best to keep them from happening again. And that's should be our main job in any first responding type business, is to cut back on, you never want to see people go through the agony that they go through when they have a fire, or the pain, that comes from accidents and these other disasters.
I think about what you guys need to know nowadays compared to maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. Fire departments decades ago, they just dealt with fires, but now there's a car accident, there's a medical emergency, Faribault Fire Department or police department or fire department are responding.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is created by other humans, and all the terrorism, but even things that we've gotten into. Last night, you'll appreciate this. We had training last night. We brought in the groups brought in a whole semi full of corn, and we did grain bin rescue. Not in a grain bin because it was cold, but we did it in the back of a semi. Same
principles.
Yep. So when people get themselves into a bad situation, we then have to, on our end, figure out how to either prevent that from happening, and when it does happen, how to best help those people. And grain bins, all these other confined spaces, trenches that we dig.
Manure pits, that's another new one that
yeah.
we never worried about decades ago.
Right, so they're all based on humans doing new, innovative things, and we get ourselves in trouble sometime, and we have to learn how to try to get people out of trouble.
And it is a training on your side too, isn't it? Because I've often thought about, okay, somebody's life was on the line here, and some of us would probably just panic. What do I do? What do I do? That's where the training kicks in, right? Yep. For the people that do this.
Training, muscle memory. We hear it all the time. Having the right equipment, knowing how to use the right equipment, and scenarios are very vast, and you can't ever set it up exactly how the next emergency may happen. But just knowing in general how this piece of equipment works and how the body reacts when this happens to it, helps us to bring the whole thing together to make for a better outcome.
I remember I was interviewing an F-15 fighter pilot at the Steele County Fair one year, who actually had been in combat, and I said, how do you do with it? And he said, when the crisis happens and you're in combat, the training kicks in and you're too busy. Afterwards is when you break out into a cold sweat.
Yeah, and it's true. I know sometimes we train on the same thing over and over and over, and sometimes, we're doing that again. But that's what you have to do to make it, muscle memory come in and just kick in. You don't have to think about doing it. This is the only way you know to do it, because that's how you train, so that's what you do.
You have some training too in how to put it in the back of your mind when you go home to be a dad again, or to be a mom, or that's what how can you put that out of your mind and go home?
Well, it never truly is out of your mind, but we've gotten better as agencies.
Helping people with it.
Yeah, we bring in people.
We'll get down to business here a little bit and talk about some things that you can do to prevent emergencies and accidents from happening, the first thing that comes to mind is, sounds like it's supposed to get pretty cold tonight, so that means a lot of furnaces are going to be running pretty steady.
Yep. You know, we always talk at the beginning of the year, have somebody go through them or double check them because they've been sitting there and not working. You know, now at this time of the year they've been working, I wouldn't say overly hard, it hasn't been too bad of a winter, but they've been working for a few months. So make sure your filter, make sure you have a new filter in there, and that's just not because it's cold, it's just you got to do that once in a while so you don't overwork the furnace. That's really the most that a homeowner can do is make sure that you have a good filter in there. A plugged up filter makes that fan motor work too hard and can get hot and not necessarily be a major fire hazard because it is inside of a metal housing. So yeah, it can smoke and put some smoke in the house. But more of a concern, or as much of a concern as fire, is now your furnace is down and now you don't have heat.
And it's getting cold in the house.
Yeah, and water will freeze sooner or later, and you know people have to be safe and stay warm. So some of those filters, the ones I use are just the cheapy filters. That's what my
and just
furnace
replace
guy
them
said.
every month or two.
Yeah, just take a look. It only takes a couple minutes and put a good one in there.
We hear so much from you guys about smoke detectors and changing the batteries, and we never hear much about carbon monoxide detectors. And this actually happened to me when we were out at the farm when our furnace was only 10 years old. We bought the house when it was a year old, and for whatever reason the people that built it had a fuel oil furnace rather than propane. And we'd gotten a smoke detector for Christmas. It was still sitting by the Christmas tree where I'd plugged it in, and all at once one morning that that carbon monoxide detector was going off. And lo and behold, called the repairman, and the fire, where the fire is, this big, had a crack in it.
Yep.
Carbon monoxide was getting into the house.
Yep. So CO detectors, you know, you hear once in a while that somebody had one in a fish house or something crazy like that. But we go to them, I would say on average probably one a week.
Really?
Thankfully, most of them are old detectors. You know, they only last 7 to 10 years old, or 7 to 10 years. So if you think yours is that old, look at it. Even if you don't think it's that old, do it because time flies and you'll be surprised. There's a date on it on the back of it somewhere. I always recommend having two. One can go off, one can be bad. Having two of them go off is really a sign that something's going on in a house, because CO is not heavier or lighter than air. With your furnace running and cold air returns, it's just going to mix it throughout the house. So if both of them are going off, there's a pretty good chance that there's CO in the house.
And if you have a natural gas leak or a propane leak, they put that foul smelling gas in it so you know it. But if you have carbon monoxide building up in your house, all at once you might get a headache apparently, or you might not. You might just fall asleep, and that's the end.
Yeah, your detectors are set up to detect at 35 parts per million, and not that that means a whole lot to you, but on the graduated scale at 35 parts per million, you can be in that for 8 hours and only get a headache. So what that shows you is how sensitive those detectors are. It'll tell you really early on that you have some CO in your home. And anything that produces a flame, gas appliances, water heaters, stoves, dryers, it can all produce CO because it's in the exhaust from the burning. And like you mentioned before, if your chimney falls apart or if it gets plugged, that exhaust stays in the house. So there's a lot of bad things in exhaust, and CO is one of them.
Even on a cold morning, you could see, maybe you weren't quite thinking, you opened the garage door and then you started your car, going to leave it warm up for a little bit. Well, maybe the wind is such that carbon monoxide starts building up in your garage, and maybe that could get into the house. I mean, silly things, goofy things can happen.
It will, and they happen a lot. You need to, it's a good idea to warm up your car for many reasons, but pull it out of the garage and shut the garage door before you go. And we go on those calls, you know, monthly, that we find out that, yeah, I was warming up my car and it's an attached garage, and open the door and, you know, the exhaust from the car comes in and now the detector's going off. It's easily fixed, but don't let it happen to begin with. Just back your car out and let it warm up outside.
Carbon monoxide detectors are very inexpensive, I assume. All the hardware stores or home, they're all over and pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to call inexpensive. You know, it depends on
compared to
price.
dying,
Yeah.
everything is inexpensive, I guess.
That's right. You put a price on your life, and it's really very cheap. So there's a lot of different versions. There's CO and smoke detector combinations. There's hardwired plug-in ones. We do recommend that you get one that has a readout on it. So when you call in, if you call 911 or if you call the fire station directly, that's one thing we can ask you. What does the readout say? If it says, 1,000 parts per million, you need to get out of there right now if you're in there. If it's at 35 or somewhere in that area, it's not as big of an emergency. We still are going to come and check it out and try to find the problem. But having one with a readout on it is very nice, because that's just more information that you have.
And you said carbon monoxide detectors, 2 in each home, like one upstairs, one downstairs. It's not like the smoke detectors were, what is it now? I forgot, like a dozen of them.
Yeah, because typically CO is a problem in the winter when you have your furnace running and the air circulation is throughout your home. What we say with all detectors, the main place for a detector is where it's going to wake you up. So don't put it down in the furnace room, because that might be what produces the CO, but it's going to be down there going off and blaring, and nobody's going to know it. It doesn't do you any good. So it needs to be up where it's going to wake you up, because that's the problem we have, is when you're awake or when you're sleeping, you don't know this is going on. Even when you're awake, you can't smell it, but you're going to get you're going to feel nauseous, you're going to get a headache. So there's some other signs there, but you really need that working for you when you're sleeping and your senses aren't working for you.
Well, let's move on to another issue that maybe a lot of folks are right now, maybe some supplemental heat. We're plugging in those little electric heaters, running extension cords through the house.
Yep, extension cords are just that. They are for temporary use. They're not to be ran in walls, in ceilings, under rugs. They need to be able to breathe, to carry the electricity through them. And as soon as you cover them up, they no longer can breathe, and then they can create heat. We always hear, don't put them underneath the door. That's a pinch point. You squeeze that copper wiring down, and now you get a little heat build up there, and now the door gets warm, and that's where that stuff comes from.
Or you might wear the insulation off a little bit, and now we've got an arc going, and now we got a good shot at a fire.
Yeah, you got a fire and or a shock hazard from somebody touching that.
What are some of the other things that you should be concerned about with extension cords? You go out to the hardware stores, there's so many different types. And I just bought one last fall, and it seems like we've come a long way with making these extension cords safer.
Yeah, one thing, and I'm guilty of it too, when we go to buy something, we just look right at the price and think that all extension cords are created equal. There are actually indoor cords, outdoor cords. There's different gauge wiring in there, and typically the cheaper ones are smaller gauge wire, and there's less copper in there. But you have 14 or 12 gauge wire in your wall, and then you go plug in a 16 gauge wire into that. Anybody that knows how electricity goes, you now are squeezing more electricity into a smaller piece of copper, which is going to create heat. So you don't go base cords on price. Base it on what you're going to use it. If you're using it on a table saw or some kind of a tool that draws a lot of juice, you want a bigger cord,
which is a lower number, right?
Which is a lower number size wire.
12 gauge or 14 gauge. 12 gauge is a heavier wire than a 14 gauge, right?
Correct. Yep. Correct.
Yeah. I don't know why they couldn't have done that common sense and done it the other way. You're an electrician. Why?
Yeah, I can't answer that either.
What are some of the other things that homeowners, folks should be concerned about with this cold weather, Dusty?
Well, we were talking earlier about ice dams, and thankfully we don't see a lot of that going on. We don't have a ton of snow right now, but when it comes to ice dams, they are obviously bad for your home, and they can back up and get water into your building. But the main thing we want to worry about there is having somebody that knows what they're doing get rid of those ice dams. You don't want to be up there with a heat gun.
No hair dryers?
Or hair dryers, because you could start a fire.
Yeah. I think we might have a caller. Do you have a question for Dusty? Yep. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. The phone was ringing and I thought somebody had a question. So back to the ice dams, and maybe get a professional there, because my sense is if you're having ice dams, Dusty, maybe there's something else wrong too, like not enough insulation. So it sounds like we need somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, so yeah, you got to get rid of the ice. That's the first step, but then you have to do something to keep that from happening again. And I think they use high pressure water, if I'm correct, they're heated water. So you don't want to go up there with a heat gun and start just melting that off. Seems like it makes sense, but and you're right, follow up to get it insulated so it doesn't happen again. Because if you don't, it will.
I've seen on some houses they have like heat coils up on the house, and then you plug them into the outlet.
Yeah, and they work wonderful. I've installed quite a few of those. You can put them down pipes. You can put them into tile lines to keep, if you have drains that will freeze up. They're very safe. That's what they're made to do, and they're thermostat controlled, so they're not running all the time just drawing juice. They have their own little internal thermostat, and they come on when they need to. Those work really well. I don't know exactly what they cost, but what does water get into your house cost? It's all,
and the mold that comes after that, and everything.
Correct.
It's a headache nobody wants.
Right. Correct.
Back to the extension cords again. You mentioned indoor and outdoor. And the outdoor is a major difference that they're better insulation, moisture you don't need to be concerned about, and maybe with a ground fault interrupter?
Yeah, the biggest thing between indoor outdoor, and you hit on it, is the insulation thickness, and then also the molding around the molded end. So they're more watertight. Nothing's ever waterproof, I would say, but they're more watertight. So when you think about outdoor and electricity, moisture comes into mind. It doesn't have to be a standing puddle of water. It can be wet grass. So you should be using an outdoor cord. You should be plugging into a GFCI outlet. Another thing we see is, you have a 50-foot cord and you have a crack in the end, so you cut it off and put in a new cord in, so you don't have to throw the cord away. I do the same thing. Once you do that, that no longer is considered an outdoor cord, because the ends that we can put on that we buy at a hardware store,
not like the factory,
can't keep the water out. The other ones are molded and melted, or however they do it, that keeps the water out. The ones that we put on will not keep water out.
I had some electricity classes in college, and of course most farmers know a little bit about electricity, do a little bit of troubleshooting. First thing they drilled into us in class is water and electricity just don't mix very well.
They do not mix, but do you know that water, in pure water itself, is an insulator, and you cannot get...
What?
Yep.
Is it the minerals in the water that are the conductor?
Exactly. So
distilled water is safe, regular water is not.
Don't try that at home, but in the chemical, the scientific world, once we bring the water back up out of the ground with the rust and the different things that are the metal that is in it, that's what makes it more conductive.
Well, your background being an electrician is probably very helpful, being the fire chief, because electricity is a lot of issues maybe in the calls that you respond to.
It's a part of just about everything we do, whether we're using it, whether it's part of the problem, fire, shock, machinery, locking out different things, making sure that there isn't power there to further hurt the person or the responders that are trying to help the person that may be trapped or have something going on.
You made a point earlier too, Dusty, about it's okay if you have questions or concerns to call the fire department.
Yes, we're there. We say we're there 24/7. That doesn't mean that we're always in the building 24/7. We may be out on a call or out running around doing some other work stuff. But if you have any questions, if you have some concerns, the fact that your mind told you that you have a concern or a question and you should call somebody is enough to override I don't know if I want to bother them. You're not bothering us. That's what we like to share what we've learned to keep other people safe, and we would rather meet you on a phone call as opposed to pulling up lights and sirens and meeting you that way.
And if it's an emergency, obviously it's 911. But it's just a call, a safety issue, then the regular Faribault Fire Department number, right?
Correct. Yep. They can just call 334-8773. That gets you just a regular landline. And you can call 911 and dispatch will patch you through if necessary. If you're ever in doubt what to call, just call 911. Don't even hesitate to call 911. They can patch us through.
Now I have to tell my Dusty story. It was summer. We lived in our new house for a couple years, and there was a lightning strike. Stephen was downstairs in the lower level, windows about ground level, and there was so much electricity it kind of blew him back from the computer he was sitting on, and my wife was sitting in the family room, and she saw a blue streak go from the TV to the remote control, sitting on the couch by her, and her body was tingling, and Stephen's body was tingling. And I got home, and they were a little scared, and obviously we had a lot of voltage coming through the house, and all these smoke detectors, and the main circuit breaker had tripped, you know, in the main entrance panel, and circuit, and like the couple appliances had burned out, the garage door opener, the underground watering system. And I'm a little concerned now because it's about 8:30 at night, and my smoke detectors probably don't work, and it's kind of scary. So I called the regular Faribault Fire Department number. I didn't know who answered, and I explained what had happened. And it happened to be Dusty, and Dusty goes, "Well, Jerry, we must have done it right, because I helped wire your house. When all that electricity came into the house, the path of least resistance was the entrance panel down through the ground." Do you remember that?
Yeah. Some, you know, we take for granted our electrical system in the buildings that we're in. We do need to take care of those things. But you also bring up another good point, and I don't want to veer too far from it, but I do want to get a plug in there for the Everbridge notification system.
What is that?
Well, that is a notification system that it can be on any of your devices, whether it's your home phone, your cell phone, email, anything that we can send out a notification. So if you go to the city or the county website, you can sign up. It's free. We use them for weather warnings. We use them for missing children. We use them, well, you know, the people around the downtown and in town. We use them for snow emergencies. So you go in there, create an account. You can sign up for whether you want to know about high wind warnings. There's like 150 different things you can check. You wouldn't really need like high surf or hurricane warnings, you know, hopefully here. But there is a lot of different things you can check for. You also you don't have the option of opting out of like severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. The system has been around for a few years. They've upgraded it to where you won't get like the flood watch at 3 in the morning when you live on top of a hill. So there's some blackout times that you can put in there so you're not woke up in the middle of the night. So
what if it's a tornado warning? It might be a good thing.
Tornado warnings, you don't have an opt-out, and there's a good reason for that, because everybody needs to know that. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. So we're encouraging everybody to go on and get signed up. It's available in Steele and Rice County, and we don't have nowhere near the amount of people signed up onto that system, and it's really a good system. If nothing's going on, you don't get the warning or the advisory, but if there's something going on, we've even gotten them for, you know, criminal activity in a neighborhood type thing. We use it for a lot of things, but if you're not signed up, you don't get those warnings.
So all at once you get a text message or a phone call on your cell phone, for example.
Yeah, and you pick the order you want it in. So like most people will get a text message, and then if you don't reply to the text message, and it goes on to the very next system, which could be, say, your voicemail or your cell phone ringing. And then if it doesn't get that, the system keeps going through until it exhausts all the options that you give it to notify you, or you get the message. So it's a very good system.
Isn't technology wonderful?
Yeah, it is. And we're getting it zeroed down. You know, there was some issues with the flood watch at 3 in the morning when you don't live anywhere near any water. You know, people don't need to know that, and so then they want to get off of the system because we don't want to be bothered in the middle of the night with stuff that doesn't concern us. And we heard that, and we understand that. The system had been upgraded to eliminate those issues best it can.
Boy, we really need to get the word out, because this is a great safety feature that folks could utilize. That's always my concern. We're in a severe thunderstorm watch, a tornado watch, and well, I go to sleep at night, and I'll tell you, in our house, I'm not sure that siren, you know, the city's sirens would wake me up.
And that's a very good point, because that is not what those sirens are for. We get that a lot. Well, I can't hear the siren from my house. They should all be called, and we consider them outdoor warning sirens. So those are sirens for people that are not in their home, because typically people in their home, they have a radio or a TV on. They're going to get the warning from that. The outdoor warning siren is for the person out riding bike or walking or not near a device that can tell them there's something going on. Now, these have been around a long time, and you know, most people carry cell phones, but even so, Outdoor warning sirens are not meant to wake you up in your home. They're for people outside.
So how do you sign up for this emergency text or phone message then again?
The Rice County or Steele County website, the City of Faribault website, you look for Everbridge notification and go on there. It'll walk you through. It asks for some information like your phone number and different things, and you create an account that you can manage. Nobody gets that information. Dispatch in Owatonna helps manage it, and if you need help doing that, you can call us at the fire station. We can help walk you through getting signed up, but we want everybody to get signed up.
Well, if the kids can do it, we can do it eventually. I had a tour with some Girl Scouts the other night here at the studio, and all of us, they were all excited because all their cell phones were going off. Faribault had canceled school for the next day.
Yeah,
that must be the same type of thing.
Yep. And if you can't do it, then call a kid and they'll get you signed
they'll
up.
sign you up for
it. They'll do it.
Yeah. How long has this been available, Dusty?
Well, it's been a couple years at least.
Boy, well, we got to get more people on that because, especially in the summertime with severe thunderstorms and tornado warnings, boy. And you never know. Like maybe there's a tanker and there's a spill and that we need to get the word out to people in a hurry.
Yep. You always hear that in movies and on the news where something got destroyed by a tornado, and well, we didn't have any warning, we didn't know it was coming, and so getting the word out and getting warning to people is the number one thing that we need to have happen to keep people safe.
We only have about a minute left, Dusty, but once again, if you have questions and concerns, talk to the crew at the Faribault Fire Department. That's why you're there.
That's correct. Give us a call if you're not near. Well, you can still call Faribault if you're not near there, but Owatonna, all the fire departments around, you can give them guys a call too if you have other questions that you want to talk to your fire department. But feel free to give us a call and we'll help you any way we can.
And once again, any question about maybe an emergency, 911. If it's a more concern about something else, then you can call the regular number.
Yep, and we hear that a lot. I didn't know if I should call 911. Don't hesitate. If you need us, you need us fast, call 911.
Yeah, any question, 911, it's amazing. 24 hours a day, somebody's there to answer the question. And while you guys maybe are on the way, they can help you in the meantime till the real help gets there.
Yep, that's right. Dispatchers are trained and they can help out the best they can over the phone.
Well, appreciate you coming in to visit every once in a while, Dusty.
Thanks for having me.
That was Dusty Dienst, who's the fire chief in Faribault. We'll look forward to doing this again before too long, because I think you are kind of on a regular schedule with Gordy, aren't you, Dusty?
Correct.
That goes to that education part, right?
That's right.
Here's the national news from ABC.